Hello. I'm just giving you guys your 5-minute warning. If you can grab your drinks, snacks, and seat, we'll get started in less than 5 minutes. If Clifford Daniels and Angela Wesley could make their way to the front, that would be appreciated.
Of a tree. I was telling her that I would soon be there, 'cause the fire was lifting, my mind started drifting like the smoke curled in the air. The TV flaps were open and the sound was all alive, and the smoke made everything look old. I've seen her in the fire, and I've seen her in the earth. Everything she touches turns to gold. I could see her in the water, I could see her in the clouds, singing like a bird who lost a friend. I have prayed to the Spirit, and I thanked Him for our love. I thanked Him for the love that never ends.
So if I can ask you to take your seats, and we'll get started. Just a couple of housekeeping items. Lost and found. Anybody lose a binder cover? This was found out in the foyer. I'll have it with me at the desk if anybody knows whose it is. And just so you're aware, we do have note takers at all of these sessions. So the notes will be available on the website. And so will the PowerPoint. They'll be also posted, all the PowerPoints will be posted to the website as well. And if you're looking to have a side meeting or you need a meeting space for any of your discussions, please see the desk at the front, and they do have a meeting room available. If I could ask that the doors get closed at the sides here. Kirk, could you grab those doors? Thanks. So I'd just like to introduce our next plenary. The plenary is titled Building Today, Modern Treaty Organizations and Community Development. Our speakers, our panelists, are Clifford Daniels of Betchico Chief, Clecho Government, Angela Wesley, partner of WestCan Advisory Services. And I'm going to did you want to go first, Angela? Okay. So Angela is going to take it away. Yes.
Good morning, everyone. There's a lot of you out there. I can't tell you how nervous I am. I'd like to thank the organizers very much for inviting me to make a short presentation and tell a little bit of the story of my nation. I want to acknowledge and thank the Algonquin people, acknowledge that we're on their unceded territory. Also, because I'm going to be telling the story of my nation, I always want to acknowledge my head hereditary chief, my Tai Hatwith Clishin. I think he was supposed to be here today and wasn't able to join us, but I always want to acknowledge him as the traditional head and a very, very much part of our government. Also, our chief counselor, Robert Dennis, and one of our executive council members, John Jack, who has inspired a lot of what I'm going to say today. So I want to give them acknowledgement because I'm only telling their story. So uklama shishikwalap histak shil Ho'et nu chanathat. My name is Angela Wesley. I'm from the Ho'et First Nation, from the west coast of Vancouver Island. Got to coordinate my technology here. I play a number of roles and I wear a number of hats. First and foremost, I'm a Ho'et citizen, and normally that's how I like to introduce myself first, because I like to think that everything that I do and that most of us in this room do comes back to trying to create a better world for our future generations and for our children. So no matter what hat I happen to be wearing, that's the most important one always. Just a little bit of background on me. In our pre-treaty world, I was involved in modern treaty negotiations for the entire modern-day treaty process, and prior to that, I was involved in land claims with my tribal council, the Nuu-chah-nulth Tribal Council. So I have a lot of mentors, a lot of people who've taught me along the way, and I'm always grateful to them. I've been involved extensively in citizen engagement in every aspect of our treaty process. I heard somebody saying, our elder saying this morning, is that we always wonder if we can do it, and darn it, every step of the way we can. Every time we think we've reached the hardest thing, something else comes along and we just do it. So I've been involved in helping our citizens to understand the change that's coming forward, been involved in our law and policy development as we led up to our effective date of our treaty, and proud to say I was the Constitution Chair building our Ho'et Constitution, and that to me is one of the greatest things I've done in my lifetime, one of the greatest learning experiences. Post-treaty, I am the tripartite representative for the Monmouth First Nations on our implementation committee. I've served as speaker, legislative chairperson for our Ho'et legislature and for our people's assemblies. And currently, I've been the chair of our group of businesses, our Ho'et group of businesses, since about 2012. I'll tell you a little bit about our businesses. I was honored to be appointed to the Treaty Commission, BC Treaty Commission, as a commissioner in 2018, and want to acknowledge our Chief Commissioner, Celeste Haldane, who's going to be addressing us at lunchtime as well, and thank her for allowing me to be here as well. And I've worked with BC First Nations since about 1992. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our First Nations, Ho'et First Nations. We're a signatory to the Monmouth Treaty. We've been under treaty now for coming on 9 years, together with 4 other First Nations on the west coast of Vancouver Island. For Ho'et and for most of the Monmouth communities, 70% of our total eligible voters approved of our treaty. It's something we're very, very proud of. 90% of those who voted approved the treaty. So we have very strong citizen support for moving forward. The reason we got into treaty was to try to better the circumstance of our people. I want to acknowledge Chief Councillor Charlie Coots, who's in the room, President of the Monmouth Treaty Society. I think his community approved the treaty with a 97 or 98% ratification, which was just phenomenal. Showed how strong support there was in the community for that. So we're located in Barclay Sound, the west coast of Vancouver Island. We have about 800 citizens now in the Hawaiian First Nations. We've probably increased by about 300 since we've implemented our treaty. It's really opened the door for us to recognize our citizens in a different way. Significantly, about 80 to 90% of our citizens live away from home, and that's one of the reasons, again, that we needed to have a treaty, that toolbox that's going to give us the basket of resources that we need to be able to create a better world for our people. We all know, those of us in treaty isn't the end, it's the beginning of the hard work that we need to get done. So we need to be developing and creating revenues in our communities so that we can finance our own government, so that we can provide the kind of services that we want to provide for our people. I heard our elders again this morning say there's a growing middle class. What a great accomplishment in our communities. What a fantastic goal, and we always want to reach beyond that. So as a nation, we've been self-governing since April of 2011 and very proudly operate under our own constitution and our own Hawaiian First Nations laws. So the other side that I'm here to talk about is the economic development side and how our business and our government work together. So I chair our group of businesses. I sort of moved out of the government side after in a post-treaty environment and more towards our business side. So there's photographs of a couple of our businesses here. We're very proud to say that in addition to having lands under our treaty, we also were able to purchase a number of lands in Bamfield. And I hear our people saying that, we own half of Bamfield now, which is the small fishing village that is adjacent to our community. So we have 7 limited partnerships. Forestry is our mainstay, and we're really trying to diversify away from that. We have principles that I'll talk about that, talk about us respecting our lands and leaving something for future generations, and we're very heavily dependent on forestry right now to create our revenues. So we're really looking at tourism opportunities, fisheries opportunities, things that really fit within the principles of us moving forward. But in Bamfield, we've recently purchased the Market and Cafe. We have a beautiful campground. You can see a picture of it in the lower left-hand side there, the view from our campground. We have motel and pub, lodge, and B&B facilities. We have gravel operations, of course, our forestry operations. We operate a small sort, and we have commercial fishing licenses as well. So when we talk about my community, we always want to talk about our vision. Why are we doing anything that we're doing? And it all comes back to our vision. It's our guide. We created this vision, we documented this vision about 25 years ago when we were getting into the treaty process. One of my mentors, the late George Watts, sat us down in our treaty negotiation committee, and he said, you're going to need something to guide you along the way. You're going to always need to focus on where it is that you're going, and don't stray from that. Everything that you do has got to lead you towards this vision. So I do a lot of planning work with other communities, and this vision isn't different from most First Nations and indeed most people in general. So our vision statement says the Hawaiian vision, a strong, self-governing, and self-reliant nation. Isak, which is our word, our law for respect, and I know a lot of First Nations share that. Isak will guide us as we work together to foster a safe, healthy, and sustainable community where our culture, language, spirituality, and economy flourish for all. You'll see there our brilliant communications team at the time we were ratifying our treaty put together this collage of photographs to represent what our vision was. And it was really it was such a great feeling to see that while our vision is aspirational and that we really wanted to achieve great things in the future, when we looked around, we saw that a lot of that was happening now. It just wasn't happening enough. So this collage is something that really guides us as we move forward along with our vision statement. So I'm going to try to focus more on economic development. It's such a huge story, as you all know, but I'm going to try to focus down. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the foundations for successful economic development in a post-treaty environment. 4 things that I wanted to really stress. Guiding principles. Having guiding principles to support good decision-making throughout is really critical. Making sure that alongside your vision, you understand what your principles are in terms of how you're going to move forward and what you're going to choose to do. Having a comprehensive economic development plan that establishes priorities. This didn't come to us overnight. We didn't have the luxury of doing a lot of this work pre-treaty, so a lot of this stuff really hit us in the face when the effective date came along. It's like, oh crap, we got to do that too. So there's a lot of things that, it's a pressure to do a whole lot of things when it came to our effective date. So our economic development plan, I think, is being refined. It started off being very aspirational. We want to do it all. Of course, there's so many things we want to get into. But resources are limited, time is limited, so we have to choose what our priorities are. So we're finding over time that we're refining our economic development plan and strategy so that we're starting to really focus on a couple of things that we can do and we can do well. Strong and reliable leadership that support implementation of the plan. It takes a lot of discipline not to chase the shiny things. So we've really got to set out the plan and agree between our business arm and our government that sets our priorities that we're going to stick to the plan. And an arm's length civil service to implement the laws, regulations, policies, and procedures that's free of political influence. So that's really critical and why we set up a business arm and trying to keep the politics out of business, to keep the politicians and our leadership focused on the bigger picture, the 30,000-foot, how are we going to make life better for our people? What do we need to provide them with from hopefully what will eventually become the piggy bank that's going to feed into those kind of programs and services. And really critical that everybody be involved in that. So there's a huge communication component, as we all know, in just about everything that we do. So we have 3 guiding principles in our community that we try to strengthen every day. Every day, our mantra is ancient spirit, modern mind. When we were putting together our constitution, we really said, and when we were talking to our citizens about what our aspirations were, we wanted to bring our past together with our future. So our mantra has been ancient spirit, modern mind. We want to take the best from where we came from and who we are, and we want to blend that with where we're at today in this modern world. So three principles guide us throughout our nation, throughout our group of businesses. ESOC, respect. I talked about that in our vision statement. A greater respect for everything around us. I think we all know as First Nations people how big that word is and how much of a law that is to our people. U'ashak, taking care of everything for future generations. And Heshukma Tsawak, everything is one, everything is interconnected. So everything we do, we have to think about the impacts that it has on something else. So the concept of triple sustainability is something we really try to practice in the community when we think about what it is that we want to get involved in economic development. Our initiatives have to take into consideration the trade-offs, the balance, and the acceptability of the activities that we undertake. Measures and attempts to create balance based on 3 criteria: economic, social, and environmental sustainability. So in terms of economic sustainability, we look at profitable businesses that can create long-term jobs and careers necessary for nation building and also to be able to earn profits. Trying to keep the politics out of the business, trying to manage that relationship between our political arm and our business arm is really critical. So again, a few of our businesses here, our market, Kingfisher Lodge, now called Oopnit, and our motel, used to be called The Motel. It's now named after the place that it sits on. Social sustainability, the activities that we choose have to be acceptable to the community, and that's determined by our leadership, by our citizens, and by our hereditary chiefs. Everybody talks about what it is that we want to get involved in. It can't be just leadership, it can't be just the businesses that are just willy-nilly out, choosing things that we can do because we think we can make money out of it. It's got to go through community processes. Fair, direct, and realistic opportunities for Hawaiian citizens to find employment or to otherwise benefit from the businesses. Environmental sustainability, health and safety requirements, of course, are paramount. We want to minimize our ecological footprint, avoid, minimize, or mitigate harmful impacts on the environment, ecosystem, and habitat systems. This is a tremendous balance. Our nation was looking at an LNG project in our community. Our nation is in the forestry business. We cut down trees. There's huge diversion in our community about what we should be doing and how we should be doing that. So it's a very difficult discussion, and it's one that has to be an ongoing discussion because we have to be comfortable with the choices that we make because our future generations are relying on that. So creating the environment for a stable economic development requires a number of things, as you all know, but things like land use and planning and zoning, resource management and environmental stewardship, infrastructure and community planning, business licensing and entrepreneurial incentives, and training and education. We need to get people ready to take on the jobs that we're going to be creating. So these kind of things sometimes can stand in our way if we don't have them done, and we've found that out. I'll talk about that a little bit later. So creating that environment for balance, again, making sure that the policy and plans, especially the economic plans and the land use plans, making sure we've got good agreement from our community on what we can do, where and when on our lands, they all need to be in place so that we can meet those targets of triple sustainability. Generation of profit as a priority has to be balanced with individual and collective rights, social enterprise requirements of the community, citizen employment, training requirements, capacity building, all have to be taken into account. And sometimes when you're doing that, you can't also generate profits. So it's a process. Oh, sorry, I'm using my own. So I missed a whole bunch of slides. Sorry, I put some pictures in there to kind of divert it. I'm using my own screen here. So talking a little bit about the Hawaiian model. So each element of triple sustainability is equally important, but it requires a different set of values, approaches, and goals that can sometimes conflict with each other. We know that. We want to make money, but we also need to be thinking about our community and our citizens and how we can make life better and keep our environment in a good way. So the challenge is agreeing on a balance and maintaining that balance over time. So in the Hawaiian model, the way we're trying to operate our businesses and our economic development, the nation or the government, not the business arm, determines which businesses the nation is going to become involved in. So that planning, that, what do we want to get involved in, what don't we want to get involved in, very much a function of the nation. Once the nation has decided what the business we want to get into, there's requirements in our laws for feasibility studies and business plans that have to be done, and then that goes over to the business arm. There's a formal agreement between the nation and the group of businesses. It's called a governance and fiscal agreement. It talks about reporting requirements. It talks about the kind of revenues that end up going back to the nation. All of those kind of things are dealt with in that agreement, as well as very extensive reporting requirements, as some of my friends in the room know. So here's a bit of a picture of our model. On the left-hand side, we've got the government operations. The Hawaiian government forms our legislature, our executive council, all led by our chief executive, our executive director, who runs the programs and services for the nation. On the right-hand side is our group of businesses. You can see the 7 limited partnerships that are listed on the bottom, governed by an independent board. I chair that board. There's 2 other citizens on the board. We've also looked for outside special expertise to make sure that we're able to make decisions with the proper expertise that we need to deal with the businesses that we have. So there's operating boards for each of the LPs to save money and time. Oh, sorry, thank you. So to save money and time, we've combined those operating boards. We're the board of each of those LPs, but we function under a management board so that we only have one board. We have one CEO who oversees the businesses, and then there's various managers within each of those operations. So our business structure is meant to allow businesses to operate independently, not separately. That's a really important distinction. We're still one. We still are all connected with the nation. The nation is still who we're all working for. We're trying to make life better for the citizens. So we don't consider ourselves to be separate, but we consider ourselves to be independent. The government creates that overall strategic approach of economic development, and the business structure makes the day-to-day management decisions to try to achieve the goals and objectives of the businesses. So some challenges with implementing the structure: extensive process and reporting requirements allow us to sometimes focus far too much time on reporting and not enough time on running the businesses. And that's kind of normal. There's a real trust element at first. I mean, there's perception that the businesses are taking away something from the government, which shouldn't ever be the case. But that perception is always there. So that need to be reporting back constantly to make Executive Council comfortable with what it is we're doing in the business, to make sure they're getting enough information to be able to report to citizens is really, really critical. We find, and I think some of our neighboring nations who are under similar situations find that sometimes the reporting requirements are just so unwieldy, and we really need to get over that. I've always said to our board that, if I was on executive council, I know what I'd want to see. So let's keep that in our minds and make sure that we're communicating information back to our political leaders, our shareholders, so that they understand what's going on, they feel comfortable talking to citizens and supporting the group of businesses. So there's also sometimes some expectations that it's the business's job to provide the housing, to provide the jobs for citizens and all of those things. And that's really a shared responsibility. So we're always having that conversation of who's responsible for what, because primarily we should be looking at our businesses to bring revenues into the nation so the government can supplement programs and services. But it's difficult. It's a really hard job when we've got 80% of our people that live away from home and a goal of moving people home and needing to have opportunities for them. There's a lot of pressure on the businesses to kind of do it all. And citizens continue to complain to chief and council. That's just what we've always done, right? So trying to get them to come back, to bring their complaints into the businesses and to talk it through with our structure that's there is really important, but it's difficult for leaders to tell their citizens you have to go and talk to somebody else. So it's really a challenge that's there all the time. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide, but it's really the crux, I think, of what we need to figure out. What is economic development versus business development? Economic development is about job creation. Business development is about profit, generally. Economic development has a geographic focus. Business development has a market focus. We're looking anywhere to build those businesses and bring revenues in. Economic development is about business promotion. Come to our territories, come and see Hawaiian lands. Business creation is about creating the businesses to support people that are coming into the territory. Economic development is very much public sector, where business development is more private sector. And economic development answers to the community. So that's the leadership side, government side. Business development answers to the shareholders. Business answers to the political leadership. So moving towards success for the people, colonial history has left us with many economic disadvantages, from lack of vital infrastructure to the damage to the hearts and souls of our people in residential schools to the loss of our lands. When we've overcome, at least to a large degree, the cycle of dependency among our people that resulted from those damages, we can consider that a large part of our success. Our measure of success is not only profitability from businesses, it's also measured in the betterment of the lives of our citizens. We continue to do what we can to stoke the fires of self-reliance, industriousness, and the importance of taking back control of our lives. These are universal values across mankind, and indeed the lessons of our ancestors. Our communities had active and vibrant economies before contact, and despite the damages done, we can and will reinstill that same passion in our people to once again not only survive, but to thrive and prosper in our homelands. We have a lot of work to do, and we're doing it. Thank you very much.
Morning. I also, too, would like to recognize the unceded territory of the Algonquin and welcome all your leaders, chiefs, elders, youths. And it's only the first time for me to use this, so I'm Chief Clifford Daniels from Bishoco, and I'm a member of Tlinchot Nation, Northwest Territories. Tlinchot live primarily in the four communities of Bishoco, Huati, Wikwiti, and Gamiti, each separated by hundreds of kilometers, and yet in unity, we are able to accomplish great things. Our Tlinchot our land, lies east. I forgot to do this here, sorry. So it lies east of the Mackenzie River, between Great Slave Lake and Great Bear Lake in the Northwest Territories. These lands are rich in history, culture, and resources. Our way of life defines our language and our connection on the land and its resources. Since time, beyond time, our people have survived through close and respectful relationship with the world around us. These traditions continue to this day. Our chief Mofi described the traditional area of the Tlinchon during the signing of Treaty 11. At the time of the signing, Chief Mofi pronounced the words that continue to guide us as Tlinchon. As long as the sun rises, the river flows, and the land does not move, we will not be restricted from our way of life. These are the words we live by. The Tlinchon are a modern treaty nation. Our treaty, the Tlinchon Land Claims and Self-Government Agreement, was signed on August 25th, 2003, exactly 82 years after the Treaty 11 was signed by Chief Mofi in 1921. And we are headed to the centennial 100-year celebration, which will be next August next year. The overview of our treaty. The Tlinchon Land Claim and Self-Government Agreement is the first combined land claims and self-government agreement in Northwest Territories. It was negotiated by the Dogub Treaty 11 Council, the Government of the Northwest Territories, and the Government of Canada. The Tlinchon Agreement was signed by the parties on August 25th, 2003, effective date of August 4th, 2005. Canada, the Government of Northwest Territories, and the Tlinchon are parties to the agreement. The agreement defines our Tlinchon rights relating to the lands, resources, and self-government. The Tlinchon Agreement includes 3 core geographic areas. Mofi Ga de Nitle, which you'll see is the bigger boundary, is the traditional use of the Tlinchon within this area and have rights to hunt, trap, fish, influence decisions on projects, and participate in benefits. Within Wikezi in the blue line border, the Tlinchon government participate in the co-management of resources, both renewable and non-renewable. And on the Tlinchon lands, which you see in the pink, the Tlinchon government has fee simple ownership of 39,000 square kilometers of land, both surface and subsurface. Tlinchon Self-Government Agreement provides, Tlinchon Agreement provides for self-government. The Tlinchon Agreement was created with lawmaking authority over Tlinchon citizens and Tlinchon communities on Tlinchon lands. This lawmaking authority includes aspects of resource management, education, adoption, child and family services, training, income support, social housing, economic development, and Tlinchon language and culture. The Tlinchon community government of Bishakon, Huachi, Gameti, and Wukwiti were also established on August 4th, 2005, and are responsible for municipal services and represent and serve all the residents in the communities. The Tlinchon Agreement also accompanied by intergovernmental agreement that established the Tlinchon Community Service Agency. The Tlinchon Agreement is compiled by an intergovernmental agreement established, the agency is responsible for the management and administration, delivery of health, education, and other social programs and services to the residents in the 4 Tlinchon communities and on Tlinchon lands based on Tlinchon laws and NWT laws. The Tlinchon government structure is made up of 3 parts: the annual gathering, the Tlinchon Assembly, and the Chief Executive Council. The annual gathering is held every year in one of the Chinchon communities to bring together to share the social, political, and cultural activities of the Chinchon. The annual gathering is an open forum where Chinchon citizens can ask questions, make recommendations, provide broad policy and directions to the Chinchon Assembly. The Chinchon Assembly is a lawmaking body for the Chinchon government. The Chinchon Assembly is made up of the Grand Chief, which is here today, George McKenzie, elected by Chinchon citizens, and a chief from every of our four Chinchon communities. They're here too today. Chinchon community governments and two representatives from each Chinchon community. These members are elected by the residents of their community. They're also here. So we have everybody here from the Chinchon government here today. The Chinchon Assembly sits at least 4 times per year in one of the 4 communities. The Chief Executive Council is made up of the Grand Chief elected by Chinchon citizens and the chief from each of the 4 Chinchon communities, which would be the same level as the Premier and the ministers, I guess the cabinet. The Chief Executive Council oversees the implementation of Chinchon laws and oversees the administration of, excuse me, I was going to add something there, which I didn't, but also oversees administration and day-to-day activities. Each new assembly has set its priorities for law development and program and delivery. We do this through development of strategic and planning and process. While, like any government, our specific priorities can change, each assembly has followed the same 6 fundamental themes. We do this through development of our strategic planning process. While, like any government, our specific priorities can change, each assembly has followed the same 6 fundamental themes. Sustain our lands, water and wildlife, revitalize our language, culture, way of life, build strong, healthy communities and with opportunities for healing and wellness, strengthening Chinchon governance and institutions, build Chinchon prosperity, employment through economic development, create effective government-to-government relationship with other peoples. It is under each key themes we have developed programs and departments of government to build wellness capacity and strengthen our communities and throughout our lands. To sustain our lands and the environment, we have actively completed land use plan for our own land and are now participating in the land use planning process for our wider traditional lands. We are actively pursuing development of large protected areas in the north arm of the Great Slave Lake. This is new protected area and will create opportunities for our community members through the staff that will be needed for research, monitoring, and management of the area. Our Department of Cultural and Lands Protection is the largest and almost 30 employees at this time. It is expected to grow and almost double that within the next 5 years as we implement new programming and assume more jurisdiction. At the heart of the Chinchon culture is our language and way of life. We have many programs that are in place to support the theme. For example, our annual canoe trips that run between our communities for our annual gathering. And just imagine our armada of canoes coming. We have 6 people per canoe. In my community, the largest canoe going out was about 18. And they all meet up just prior to entering one of the communities that we're having an annual gathering. So you probably have close to 30 plus boats coming in. So it draws quite an excitement. And it just kind of reflects back of how our ancestors used to gather and meet and that. So it's a big celebration just being part of that. Our AIMBE program allows post-secondary students to take summer positions learning language, culture, and supporting community projects. In the summer and fall, we run boots on the ground, or in our language, carrying out monitoring and guardianship of the Bathurst caribou herd, which has declined from 400,000 back in the day to 8,000 presently. We have created the Tlinchon Research and Training Institute with the Tlinchon government as our center for research. Our school system is built on the vision of our old Chief Bruno to prepare youth to be strong like two people. The Tlinchon are guided by the idea that in order to be successful in the modern world, we need to be strong like two people. That is to say that our young people should be able to participate fully in the modern society, while at the same time retaining strong grounding in their traditional knowledge, culture, and language. Building healthy communities is fundamental to ongoing strength of the Tlinchon family and families and children. We have delivered many justice, social programming, and early childhood programs ourselves. And in partnership with the Tlinchon Community Service Agency, are working on designing programs that will improve the quality of life for our Tlinchon citizens in wellness, health, education, and justice. Strong programming and support for the Tlinchon people requires strong governance. We're continually strengthening our internal policies, systems, and practice to be accountable and open government. Social media is used extensively to communicate our programming and activities, and we have been working to improve the strength and connection between our co-managed institutions. Key to our community development is our people. Tlinchon government is running multiple training programs through SPF and ISETs funding and more of our own investments. We have been for many years and still are preparing Tlinchon people for involvement in many major infrastructure projects in our region, including the Tlinchon All-Season Road and mining projects, through training, scholarship investments, and the creation of employment opportunities through intern programs. Tlinchon government has also made significant investment infrastructure with our Tlinchon region to fill a massive gap that exists between our current infrastructure position and our actual needs. We have invested in the community building a new culture center and provided additional funding to other government to provide basic necessary infrastructures such as chip sealing roads, completing schools. Our investment corporation is also taking steps to tackle one of the greatest infrastructure deficits in our community, which we all know about, which is housing. Tlinchon government has also established a number of specific working groups designed to develop and implement solutions to some most challenging issues facing our people, including housing, economic development, infrastructure, and tourism. Over the last few years, we have seen great success, development of policies and programming through co-development process from developing new laws with the government in Northwest Territories, new self-government fiscal policies with the federal government, or working directly with our community governments on multiple projects, such as supporting a warming shelter for our homeless. Working on these issues collectively and breaking down the silos between our various jurisdictions has been fundamental in the success we are seeing. The Tlinchon are among the most self-sufficient government in the north. We have generated over 75% of our own revenues. Our treaty has brought jobs, investment, and improved economic opportunities for our people. A 2014 Clincho Economic Impact Assessment showed that in the first 10 years of the Clincho Agreement, our treaty resulted in a net positive impact of almost $450 million to the NWT economy. This is a great start, but there is much left for us to achieve. We have great plans for our own economic self-sufficiency and for the well-being of our people. Together, Clincho institutions employ more than 500 people. Wages and salaries continue to increase, and our Clincho citizens have pride in their government and themselves. There are new opportunities emerging for us, as well as tourism from far and wide to see the beauty of our Clincho Day. People are drawn by the northern lights, the vast lakes, and the endless forests, and the plentiful resources. They all want to know more about the Clincho, our way of life. The Clincho Agreement shows that we can achieve when our government work together as treaty partners, and that reconciliation can look like what bravery, effort, and dedication to a worthy purpose. For Clincho, self-government is a key that has unlocked the door to new world of possibilities. We are now working hard to bring possibilities into reality for our communities and our Clincho citizens. And I'd just like to close, we also have a constitution, the Clincho government. And there's one section in there I'd just like to share with you before I close, I guess. 2.1 in the Clincho Constitution. The purpose of the Clincho government and its institution is to act in the best interest of the Clincho and to respect all laws, including Clincho laws, by, among other things, acting to preserve, protect, and promote our Aboriginal and treaty rights and way of life, including just lost where I was reading here. Acting to preserve, protect, and promote our Aboriginal and treaty way of life, including our culture, language, heritage, lands, economy, and resources for all Clincho today and for future generations to come, as long as the land shall last. Masi. I was thirsty.
Taking it away. So thank you, Angela and Clifford. We do have a few minutes, 10 minutes for questions, if anybody has any questions. There's mics throughout the room. I get to put you guys on the hot seat. Does anyone have any questions for our panelists? I see none. No one's jumping. Oh, my chief, Bob Dixon. Yep.
Hello. Thanks for the presentation. Great presentation. Just have one question. When you're talking about small businesses in your communities, are they the First Nation run businesses, or do you partner with the citizens?
For our community, we're still working on trying to build entrepreneurialism within our citizens. It's definitely one of the strategies in our economic development strategy. We do provide through the government side some incentives to small business, small grants to get started. There's also an economic development corporation that's run by our 14 tribes together called the New Chanoth Economic Development Corporation that provides a tremendous amount of support to individuals that are our citizens and others of New Chanoth. In my view, it's an area where we still need to be growing. A lot of the businesses that we're in Bamfield are sort of mom and pop operations that we've bought, and including those in a corporate structure really makes it difficult to make them profitable. So we're starting to see that we need to be looking a little bit more at trying to train our people as entrepreneurs to have them maybe either lease those businesses or maybe take them over. So it's a bit of a longer term strategy for us at this point to try to get our citizens more involved in business and take them over. We have a couple of small businesses that are operated mostly on a seasonal basis, some fishing guides and tours and things like that. We're working on it, but entrepreneurialism has definitely got to be part of our economy.
Yes, we also, well, I have to kind of represent the other communities too, I guess. We do have a business arm, Kincho Investment Corporation, that really deals with all our businesses in that. And also in the communities, I guess we're trying to promote entrepreneurship because it's very lacking. And it's something new, especially we were trying to get into tourism, is a really big, it draws quite a bit of tourists up north. And we haven't really brought them into our community yet. So we're developing a strategy in that. And local businesses, I guess you do have, some family businesses, some private business, and they're just getting by. I can't say they're really making high margins. Most of the activities right now for us would be in the mining industry, mostly in the 3 diamond mines up north, and also remediation projects. So that's where most of our business is. Masi.
Do you have any other questions?
My name is Sandra Omik. I am legal counsel with Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated. I work with James Ituluk and our team there. I really like your provision on language and culture. In Nunavut, we have Article 32 of the Nunavut Agreement, which is in very broad language, and it is so broad that it's very hard to interpret. And what I like about the Tlicho agreement, it very specifies your ability to govern laws on language and culture. And I'm just curious whether your language, how strong it is in within Tlicho, because our language rates in Inuktitut is now declining at a rapid rate of about less than 50% of our toddlers. And I'm just curious, your ability to govern laws on language and culture, has it stabilized your language? Thank you.
I think, most of us do struggle with that. Where we see a gradual decline in our language too. But it's still strong. We can read and write in our language now. We do have lots of our younger generations that can read, but really can't comprehend what they're reading, but they can read. We've developed some programs with universities and that to gain our language back. So we have, I think, well over 100 people or Clinchon that have participated in those courses. And I think that's revitalizing, and they're also sharing with the younger generation. So that's, what we're doing on our side. And the smaller communities have stronger language, whereas my community is connected to the road. And there is a decline there, because I have talked to an educator, said that when that person was working in the schools, not everybody spoke Clinchon. And now it's kind of reversed. The younger generations are losing our language. Sorry to say myself too, and I'm in the same situation. My kids just picked up English and not really communicating in my mother's tongue anymore. So those are the challenges we do all face. But yes, we do have in our agreement that we have to support and protect our language and way of life. Merci.
Chief Tisha Tram, did you have a question as well? Or yeah, sorry.
Just wanted to switch over. I'll speak on behalf of my government. I just wanted to say that in our case, language and culture has become has always been a priority for us. And there's a chief that comes from British Columbia that always says, you can't save your language and culture if you're living in poverty. And I think that's one of the things that we've set as a goal in our nation, is that it's not so much laws, but it's the ability to have some additional revenues to be able to focus on language and culture. And one of our young ladies here, Brittany Johnson, she's come to join us here today. And Brittany's joined us. She came home. She's somebody who was living away from home. She came home with a passion to learn her language and learn her culture, and in a period of 2 years has done an incredible job. I watch her now. She's one of the leaders. Our language was endangered, and she's been able to work through our nation funding a position for Brittany to be charged with learning the language. So she's now spreading that through our community. We're seeing it on our website. Our language is there. So it's not so much laws that's helping us do it. It's the infusion of some extra revenues that's allowing us to put more focus on our language and culture, and to do that in a really meaningful way, I think, for the first time ever. So I wanted just to acknowledge Brittany, because she's so awesome.
I just forgot to add that we also do have a language department, so just to add that.
Awesome. Chief?
Bangwinzi. I'd like to thank the panelists and for the opportunity to speak as well. It must have been a good question, because it was asked just before myself, but I think learning our own language is a very important aspect to the reason why we went into agreements in the first place. And I appreciate some of the earlier comments as well about moving forward in 2 ways, but we also have our agreements as well. So I wanted to ask a question. What is your experience, and what do you see as some of the major issues and overcoming them to bring an understanding of our agreements to our youth as well? And I know there was an elder in my community who said something very interesting, that our agreements, the one chapter that was missing was a chapter on transition. So I just wanted to hear some of your thoughts about today and maybe lean into the future a little bit. Merci.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, a work in progress. I think that all of us really struggle with, how are we going to do that? And again, it comes down to our ability financially, unfortunately, to be able to bring our youth to these kind of things. I'm looking at Cayuga Checklisted over there. I think they've got four of their youth that have come to this kind of conference. Being able to include our young people in forums like this, to be able to have them gather. I heard the Gordon Foundation did a fantastic seminar on this weekend. Those are the kind of things that are going to help us with that transition and getting our young people in. I'm really pleased that after our effective date, the majority of our council members were quite young. They were youth who were very involved in our ratification process in our treaty, and just took up a passion for their future and for their future government. They're getting themselves educated, they're learning more and more about our culture and our language, and they're really interested in doing that and helping sort of the next generation. And I kind of tease them now because they're not so youthful anymore, so they've got to be the ones that are continuing to do that transition. So it's really got to be something that we pay special attention to, that we never let go, because that succession and transition is so important in terms of how we bring our treaties and other agreements to life.
Yes, transition is a very big thing because, you know, we got into these modern land claims and trying to develop something. And what we're developing today is not really for us, it's really for the future. So it's very important, I guess, to start bringing and the younger generations involved and understanding our agreements, because they're the ones who are going to be living it after us. And not just them, but the elders too were heavily involved in this process of a self-governing land claims process we're on. So sometimes we do understand there's differences because there's treaty rights and also modern agreements, and you know, we don't really, we're not under the Indian Act, so there's little differences here and there. But I think working together and trying to understand, resolve things, move forward, because every community deals with different things in a different way. But out of respect, I think, and just having, or working together, I think, you know, building a team and moving forward and understanding your agreement is very important. This land claims agreement coalition, you know, we've come and brought lots of our issues forward. We have lots of other issues, but together, united in that, we work with Canada and that and try to resolve all the issues that are affecting us. But besides that, hopefully, you know, things get better and better, and that's what this whole process is about. And the younger generations, I guess the transition is really getting them involved. And, you know, there's 3 Clinchon youths here today. So, you know, I guess, going to have to start encouraging to participate more and understanding our agreements more. We do have a Clinchon agreement courses in school, and also that they do have them for the public too in the communities. So there are those courses available for community members and students. Masi.
Did you have one question? Yeah, James. And this will be our last question, and then it's time for lunch.
Hello, I'm James Ituluk with the Nunavut Incorporated. If I'm out of the line, let me know. In our agreement, Nunavut agreement, the wildlife issue, it's the longest article in the Nunavut agreement. My question, whether the self-government includes the environment and the wildlife issues. We have wildlife department in our agreement, and in the north, in Nunavut, right now, the industry is coming in. Also, the Inuit people, our beneficiaries, are still much hunters, and so therefore, it's really kind of hard to balance the industry with the environment and the wildlife. You know, what sort of measures the South government takes in when dealing with the industry and the wildlife. I know when we negotiate the Nunavut land claims agreement, that was almost 40 years ago. And that time, 40 years ago, was quite different from today. And our kids are growing up. The population really growing rapidly in Nunavut, and where we're going to find these jobs for these people. So that has been our question lots of time. At the same time, we want to protect the environment and its wildlife. Also, we want to see benefits coming out of the industry. We're also looking for jobs from the industry for future generations. If you understand my question, sure, let me know.
You know, for the Clinchon, we do have, and within WIC-AZ, we do have 2 boards, the Land and Water Board and Renewable Resource Board, which Clinchon is 50% represented on the boards. And we kind of overview all the activities happening. And it's very hard, I guess, when you are Aboriginal and you really want to protect the land, your environment, and also know that jobs are important to your people too. So our agreement there is sections in there that protect our land and wildlife. There's a section in there that says the water quality and quantity has remained as is. And the wildlife, of course, we still sustain our hunting and activities and a way of life on the land. So it's very important. And so but we do have mines, and it's north of in our traditional territory. It's not close to home, but we've had experiences with a uranium mine that we were downstream of, and lots of our people worked in that area. And at that time, you got to remember that there was no regulations, no rules, and our elders remember that. But times has changed. There was another project that we're downstream of, and we had a hearing. There was probably over 26 measures that were requested for that project. It still hasn't started yet, but there's a different process now. And I think there's understanding that it's not like the old days when they just did what they wanted to do. So there's lots of consultation now, and that's very important, especially people that still use the land. So we have that process. It was one of the biggest and the first hearings we had in my community and in my region. So it didn't just affect me, it affected the whole region, that one project. So that project is still up in the air, so that hasn't really happened. But yes, it's one of the biggest dilemmas we have as Aboriginal people, is you have to create that balance and make decisions for yourself. And one doesn't outweigh the other, and somehow you have to balance that. And so that's what we're trying to do to ourselves. So, Masi.
You're good? Okay. If you could please join me in thanking these panelists. Thank you. That was awesome. Thank you. I loved your presentation. So lunch is ready, and we have a guest speaker at lunch. Celeste Haldane will be speaking at 12:30. So there's lunch on both sides of the room. I want to remind you as well, if you're looking to have a side meeting or you need a meeting space, see the desk at the front. And if I could have Elder Julia, where's Elder Julia Ogina? She's going to bless our food, and then everybody can break for lunch. Thank you. Is it working? Can you test that? This mic? Floor mic?
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. I'm an elder. I couldn't take that more gracefully if I didn't try. Kuya giptigin natin ang mga tikiuting migaptigon. Nakuyo mi oblumimon lonutamon. Ay toki magaptigon. Kuya giptigin. Hapko nakikabon. Ay tutang matawapting nun. Kuya gipti ay tokpagkapta. Kanolo atako tikainik ubapting nun na magtumik ay toki malugin. Kuya giptigin natin. Amen.
Thank you. So while you're standing, you can head to both sides of the room and grab your lunches, and we'll have our speaker at 12:30.